In this video, let's see what to do when you start the engine and you've got the battery light on. On most of the cars which are not hybrid, the electric delivery system is composed of the alternator and the car battery, also the circuits between them. So in this video we're gonna see how to remove the alternator, how to test these components. Down here is the alternator, which is also playing the role of the tensioner for the serpentine belt. You've got here as well a connector which will deliver 12 volts from the car battery. The alternator will multiply that and it will send 12 volts positive through this wire, which will be connected to the car battery. And the negative side of those delivered 12 volts is sent through the body of the car. Basically, the whole body of the alternator is basically the minus. So the first thing you want to do when the alternator is not charging the battery or you suspect some problem is to check if you get 12 volts through this connector. This is the most overlooked test. So let's unplug this connector and see if we can get the 12 volts. Okay, we've got 4 wires here. Meanwhile, I've got the car battery on the charger because I want to test later the car battery and see if it's in good condition or not. I've got the keys in the ignition and the voltmeter is turned to 20 volts. So now let's see the values. You have to see when the car is not running at the connector for the alternator. I'm going to place the ground on the first pin. Let's see the second one. We've got 0.8 volts. Third one, 1 volt. Fourth one, 1.1 volts. Let's move this one. 0.1, 0.7 and 0.7 again. Okay, so it means the connector gets power. I plug it back in there. I'm going to connect the negative terminal to the alternator and I'm going to back probe the red wire, and you can see you've got the car battery voltage. Now the next test, we're gonna do it on the battery because we can see that the alternator should work. So I'm going to start the car and we're gonna see two main things. First, we're gonna see if the alternator is charging the battery, and then we're gonna also see if it does drop below 11 volts, then it's not a big deal, but below 10 volts, it means that the battery needs replacement. This battery has 570, so we've got cold cranking amps, 570. Let's press start. And we've got 545. The battery is still in good condition. This car is equipped also with a stop and start button. Now, one thing to mention about the electric system on cars, if for example the alternator is not charging the battery, then it will over time break the battery as well. But also if the battery is weak and it cannot hold the charge, over time it can put extra stress on the alternator and it will also break the alternator. So it's very important to diagnose earlier what is the problem, because the thing is, even if for example one component will fail, you cannot notice until both of them will fail. So this is the trick that many people fail to understand. Of course, some newer cars have their own system to self-check these electric components, but on these cars like this cheap Mitsubishi Mirage, you don't have such system, so you gotta do it yourself, okay? Now let's see the last test you can do, and then I'm gonna show you how to remove the alternator. Let's take out this cover, and you can see there is a lot of corrosion here actually. We're gonna do a voltage drop test. One of the terminals, doesn't matter which one, to the 12 volt supply, and the other terminal to the 12 volt supply on the battery. When the car is not running, you're not gonna see any values because you basically connected the terminals in the same spot. However, when you start the car, let's say the alternator is delivering 14 volts, but because of the failure along the line, like corrosion or physical damage to the battery, it arrives only 13 volts. You're gonna see that difference right here. That's gonna be the amount of voltage dropped along. So before removing the alternator and replacing it, it's important to mark the position of the alternator opposing to the bracket, since the alternator is also a tensioner for the serpentine belt. And then we have to basically loosen 3 bolts. You got one on the bottom, a 14 millimeter. So you need like 3 inches from the ratchet to the end of the socket. You're gonna see only one 14 millimeter on the bottom there. If you have a long ratchet like this, it can help you a lot. So okay, just want to loosen it, not too much but not too less either. Now you can take your 12 millimeter and let's open first the bolt. I already marked here, I scratched the surface on the bracket and on the little arm of the alternator here, so I know exactly where to place it back. And now basically you've got this bolt adjusting which can push the alternator in that direction. Now we can take out the belt and we can release the 14 millimeter bolt all the way. So we need to take out as well this 12 millimeter nut and make sure that you don't touch the ratchet on the ground. Now we've got the 12 volt supply out. Now the connector is out. One of these picks are very helpful. We gotta take out the bolt. The alternator will come out as well. So you need to as well take out this bracket from here. You need a 14 millimeter again. The alternator is out now. On some alternators you can replace the voltage regulator, but on this one the voltage regulator is inside here. Now before installing the new one, sandpaper a little bit these points where the alternator will sit. If you reuse the alternator, then you gotta do the same. So the installation is the reverse process. So you need to wiggle the alternator and at the same time try to match the hole. Okay, make sure that the head of the bolt matches the shape here. Is a specific shape. Let's place these washers with the nut. We've got this special washer which will lock the nut. Okay, the alternator is in place. Now, if the test results from the car battery were bad, it's quite simple to replace it. You open these two nuts and then disconnect the terminals with a 10 millimeter. Basically with a 10 millimeter you replace this battery, take it out, put a new one back. Only new and fancy cars require a registration of the car battery. Anyway, I'm gonna do a separate video about that when I have the chance. So yes guys, thanks for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And check out the other videos I made about this Mitsubishi Mirage. So stay tuned and I will see you in the next video.